Reform, the civilian employees whom you rightly referenced and thanked, as well as billions of dollars of additional taxpayer dollars. If the Iraqi parliament may have a chance to consider this agreement, that the United States Congress would not.
Senator Obama also had an opportunity to question General Petraeus and Ambassador Crocker later Tuesday afternoon when they testified before the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. He called for a timetable for withdrawal and talks with Iran while questioning Ambassador Crocker.
I think what happened in Basra is an example of Shia versus Shia jockeying for power that underscores how complicated the political situation is there and how we still have to continue to work vigorously to resolve it. I believe that we are more likely to resolve it, in your own words, Ambassador, if we are applying increased pressure in a measured way. I think that increased pressure in a measured way, in my mind, and this is where we disagree, includes a timetable for withdrawal. Nobody's asking for a precipitous withdrawal, but I do think that it has to be a measured but increased pressure. And a diplomatic surge that includes Iran. Because if Maliki can tolerate as normal neighbor-to-neighbor relations in Iran, then we should be talking to them as well. I do not believe we're going to be able to stabilize the situation without them. If we were able to have the status quo in Iraq right now without U.S. troops, would that be a sufficient definition of success? It's obviously not perfect. There's still violence. There's still some traces of al-Qaeda. Iran has influence more than we would like. But if we had the current status quo, and yet our troops had been drawn down to 30,000, would we consider that a success? Would that meet our criteria, or would that not be good enough and we'd have to devote even more resources to it?
Senator, I can't imagine the current status quo being sustainable with that kind of precipitous drawdown.
That wasn't the question.
No, that wasn't the question. I'm not suggesting that we yank all our troops out all the way. I'm trying to get to an end point. That's what all of us have been trying to get to. And so, see, the problem I have is if the definition of success is so high, no traces of al-Qaeda, and no possibility of reconstitution, a highly effective Iraqi government, a democratic, multi-ethnic, multi-sectarian, functioning democracy, no Iranian influence, at least not of the kind that we don't like, then that portends the possibility of us staying for 20 or 30 years. If, on the other hand, our criteria is a messy, sloppy status quo, but there's not, huge outbreaks of violence, there's still corruption, but the country's struggling along, but it's not a threat to its neighbors, and it's not an al-Qaeda base, that seems to me an achievable goal within a measurable time frame. And that, I think, is what everybody here on this committee has been trying to drive at, and we haven't been able to get as clear of an answer as we would like.
And that's because, Senator, it is don't like to sound like a broken record, but this is hard and this is complicated.
Ambassador Ryan Crocker being questioned by Senator and presidential candidate Barack Obama. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. When we come back, more excerpts of the hearings and a debate. This is Democracy Now! Stay with us.
Something's happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there. He's telling me I got to beware. It's time to stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look at what's going down. You sound great. Oh, what a field day for the heat. Hundreds of thousands of people are here in the street. We're singing songs and carrying signs, mostly saying hooray for our side. It's time to
singing For What It's Worth here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We're broadcasting on over 700 stations on Pacifica and NPR, low-power FM, college and community radio stations, on public access TV and PBS TV stations, and both TV satellite networks, Dish Network Channel 9415, Free Speech TV, 9410 Link TV, and on DirecTV Channel 375. And our video and audio podcasts are online at democracynow.org. Our headlines are also available in Spanish and transcript and audio form for any radio station to take, as over 180 are. I'm Amy Goodman. We're now joined by three guests. Arun Gupta is editor of The Indypendent, a bi-monthly newspaper based here in New York, currently writing a book on the history of the Iraq War to be published by Haymarket Press. He joins us in our Firehouse studio. In Washington, D.C., I'm joined by Eli Lake, a senior reporter for The New York Sun. And also joining us from Washington, historian and investigative journalist Gareth Porter. He specializes in U.S. national security policy and writes regularly on Iran and Iraq for the Interpress Service. We welcome you all to Democracy Now! Arun Gupta, first, your reaction to the hearings, also it being seen as a debate between the presidential candidates. McCain and Clinton and Obama all had a chance to question Ambassador Crocker and General Petraeus.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting aspects is that there's this elaborate dance that goes on between the media, the Pentagon, and the politicians. We all knew what Petraeus was going to say, that he was going to come there and say, well, we can't draw down troops, but the corporate media treats it as this is some sort of dramatic breaking news. Because I think what Petraeus' real goal is to ensure that the occupation continues unhindered until January of 2009. What the Bush administration's goal at this point, and what it really has been for the last few years, is to pass off a raging occupation to the next administration, because it's going to make it harder for them to withdraw when you have 140,000 U.S. troops, 180,000 plus mercenaries and private contractors, the largest U.S. embassy in the world, and enduring U.S. military bases all throughout Iraq. So, you know, there was no real news in that. And in terms of the candidates, I think one thing that caught me was when Obama was talking about the end point, he implied that there would be 30,000 troops. So he is in a way calling for an open-ended occupation also. It's just at a lower level. And when Clinton, when she had her chance, she said, well, begin the process of withdrawal, which again implies that this could be a many-year process. So it seems to me that this is part of the dance, that even though the Democrats talk about withdrawal, because a large majority of the American public wants this war to end, and an overwhelming majority of the Iraqi public wants this war to end, they are all still committed to the continuation and the maintenance of the American empire, especially the occupation of Iraq, because we've ended up roiling one of the most strategic countries in the most strategic region in the world in terms of energy production.
Eli Lake of the New York Sun, were you surprised by anything yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree that Senator Obama began laying out markers for a policy that wouldn't betray the Iraqi people to the forces of al-Qaeda, Quds, and the remnants of the Ba'ath Party, which apparently other people in the left of the Democratic Party think are the true voices of the Iraqis. And I think that you also saw an interesting exchange on the status of forces agreement, where we don't really know the status of this agreement. It's certainly not going to be a treaty that's going to be submitted to the Senate. It is, however, going to go to the Iraqi parliament, as I think you played in your clips. And I think that they said at one point that there would be an explicit, or Ryan Crocker said he expected there would be an explicit declaration that the U.S. would not seek permanent bases in Iraq. That was somewhat news to me. And finally, I think that what you saw also was over and again, General Petraeus and Ryan Crocker said that you're seeing the Iranians supporting these special groups who they say they've trained, funded, equipped, and so forth. And when you really kind of get on a ground level, I mean, the Iranians have a policy of playing many sides in Iraq, obviously, but these special groups are people who are targeting civilians. So I think in that respect, they've made it. They think they put in very crystal relief the sort of role that the Iranians are playing, and I think you heard less. In fact, I hardly heard anything where another bugaboo in the past has been the Syrian. I think you've seen the Syrians or fewer of the terrorists coming into Iraq from Syria, who are sort of these what they call lethal accelerants.
Gareth Porter of Interpress Service, your response, and especially looking at the number of times Iran was brought up and how it's being cast right now.
Well, this whole narrative about the special groups that Eli Lake refers to, and which has been referred to repeatedly over the past year and more by the U.S. military in Iraq,